Season's come to an end, boys, just as we all expected living here in Minnesota sports. I know Joe tried to psychology us into us getting out of this mental funk of thinking that the playoffs are for ruin and only for travesty, only for the Wolves to prove him wrong, getting hammered 4-1 and just laying an egg last night in the pivotal game, season on the line, and the Wolves just forget to show up to Oklahoma City. So let's jump into it. Let's jump into your reactions now. We've had a couple hours. We've had about 12 hours to think and react and process our feelings, Joe. So where are you at after the Wolves laid a stinker with the season on the line?
So you think that because a team didn't win the championship,
Because they didn't
that
get to the championship.
past
Not just didn't win
traumas
it, didn't
past
get
traumas have
there.
won. Past traumas have left this battle
Yeah.
victorious against you and maybe Tony, but me, no, I'm fine. I understand that you don't have to win at all to avoid living in the past. However, that was
I
a
just want them
freaking
to get to the finals. I'm not asking them to win. I just want them to get there so we can
well,
experience that in Minnesota sports for the first time since Tony's been alive, since the first time that I was 3 years old. That's all I'm
if
asking.
you
That's
think
not too
about
much.
this season, I mean, realistically, how many of us thought this is a championship team this year? I think there's probably a good handful of people that thought maybe if they put it all together. But if you zoom out 30,000 foot view and take on the national narrative, nobody really thought the Wolves are going to be even a top 4 seed this year after trading Karl Anthony Towns. I think everybody here in
True.
Minnesota saw it a little clearer, and we got the result that we thought we would get late in the season and then in the playoffs. But I'll be the first to say this just wasn't as good of a playoff run as last season. Last season required a lot of grit and guts and playmaking and intestinal fortitude. You're down 20 in game 7 against Denver on the road and you come back and win. That was phenomenal stuff. And that was against a full strength Denver team. This year, the Wolves, I think, were just fortunate to get to the finals because they went through a Lakers team that had no defense, no height, very little depth. And then Steph Curry got hurt in that second round series against the Warriors. If Steph is healthy in that series, I think everybody probably agrees the Warriors win that thing because Minnesota was having a hard time getting past Golden State's defense in the majority of that 5-game series. Yeah, it looks lopsided when you look back and see, oh man, the Warriors got beat 4-1. But anybody who watched it knows that it wasn't that much of a bloodbath outside of a couple of games. So my thing is like, hey, if Julius Randle's attitude follows his shot, and if it's going in, he's happy, he's dancing on the floor. And if it's not going in, he's moping and pouting and not getting back on defense, then we have our answer. We know that this is not a guy you can go to battle with in when the going gets tough. He folds. He folds, you know. It's not good. He's like a wet diaper. This thing's starting to leak. And you can't have that on your team. You just can't. It's kind of the same
Yep.
thing with Karl Anthony Towns, but Towns was better in the conference finals last year, better in the playoffs as a whole. So, Julius Randle, he tried to shake that New York narrative that was on him as a big game loser, and he did for 2 series, but now I'm sitting here rethinking, man, that was just he was a beneficiary of the circumstances where LA had nobody to defend him and the Warriors had no depth and they lost their star player. So I'm thinking if the Warriors were winning those games and had a 2-1 or 3-1 series lead on the Wolves, we probably would have seen mopey Julius Randle. And I can't deal with that. And I would hope that the Timberwolves can't deal with that. So starting point number 1 is figuring out how you get Julius Randle off this team if I'm Tim Connolly. He may say, I love Minnesota. It's great here. The suburbs and the restaurants are great. And, I like that option, $30.9 million to come here for a year. You know what, though? If he takes that option, he's only doing it if he knows for sure he's not getting traded. So the transparency in his relationship with Connolly is going to be paramount because Connolly will wheel and deal, just like the Wolves said all last summer. We're running it back with Karl Anthony Towns. We're running it back with the same roster. And boom, a week before training camp, out goes Towns, in comes Randle and DiVincenzo. So I would not be shocked, just logically speaking, if Randle says there's too much risk here, I'm opting out. I'm going to get paid based on my big playoff numbers and great late season play. And I'll get paid more than $31 million, and I'll just go choose my location so it's in my hands. If that's the case, it's the best case scenario for the Timberwolves.
A lot to go off of there,
Yeah,
Tony.
sorry, I talked
And
for 7 minutes straight.
no, that's fine. That's fine. I've got plenty of questions to build off of that. But first, I want to get Tony. Tony, where are you at here 12, 13 hours later after the Wolves get blown out in game 5 of the Western Conference Finals and see their season collapse before their eyes?
Yeah, watching, I guess, a team lose in the NBA playoffs like this, it's different than maybe a football game or like single elimination basketball in college because it's kind of a slow burn. And I kind of came to the realization that the Wolves are going to have to beat this Thunder team probably in the next 5 years if they want any chance of going to the finals. A lot of people mentioned how OKC is going to have to pay all their guys, but they have a million draft picks, arguably the best GM in the NBA. They're going to be really good, probably for at least a decade, at least 5 years for sure.
Yeah.
But and I think the biggest thing is this Wolves team. I don't think can beat them right now. I think they have to make a big move, and I think Tim Connolly realizes that to an extent, and he has a lot of options that he can do. Bringing back Julius Randle, bringing back Naz Reid, maybe trading them. And Rob Dillingham, I think, is one of the biggest X factors in the next 5 years, I think, for this franchise. Because if he does hit his potential and maybe becomes a 12 to 15 points per game type of guy, I think their offense could improve dramatically in the short term and maybe even more in the next 5 years. But if he's not able to crack the rotation, the options this franchise had go down dramatically because OKC just has a million options they can throw at you. They have a million draft picks. They even have first round picks that are sitting on the bench. Case and Wallace is like their sixth man. They just have such a bright future, and they don't have any questions right now. The Wolves have a million questions, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few months here because the two draft picks as well. This June will be an interesting thing to follow. But there's just so many questions right now, and I think it's clear that the Wolves need to make a change if they want to make the NBA Finals next year.
So one of those changes is going to be how they deal with some of their free agents. Nolan wrote about this over on Timberwolves on SI, the 5 pressing questions the Wolves will have to answer this offseason after losing in the Western Conference Finals. And number 1 was, can they retain their free agents? Now, Joe, you kind of answered one of them, if whether you want to keep Julius Randle or not. Doesn't seem like you do. Tony, I guess let's go around and play a game of keep or move on from. Julius Randle, we already know Joe's answer. Do you want to keep Julius Randle or move on from him, and why?
Uh, if you asked me before the playoffs, I would have said keep Naz Reid, move on from Julius Randle. But if I had to pick one of the two, I think I'm picking Julius Randle. Even though he played so poorly in the conference finals, he looked great in the first 2 series. And I think he might be able to be a third option on a championship team. I don't know about second option. I think the reaction of getting rid of him might be a little too recency bias that we just saw him play poorly in the conference finals. And this team played very well with Julius Randle in the lineup, and I think they just ran into a damn good OKC team. So I think they should bring him back.
Right.
That's such a measured response. That was really good. That was really good.
You're not getting a lot of those today from Minnesota sports fans. Measured responses are just not going to happen today.
You
All
seem
right,
to
so
have
then,
like your gauges on point. That was really measured. You were respecting the success that came before the blow up. Hard to do.
Tony's older than his
He's an old soul.
natural age. Yeah.
It's the mustache.
All right, so then Naz Reid. Joe, let's start with you. Are you keeping or are you moving on from Naz Reid this offseason? He's got a player option.
Well, I mean, I saw some stuff on Twitter where he was apparently, I don't know if it's real or not, but he's beefing with somebody trolling him for being trash against the Thunder and betting on him and losing money. And if it's real, he says he's going to get $100 million, which I think that seems about right. So if you're Naz, is it a 3-year or 4-year deal? If you get a 4-year deal with Naz at $25 million a year and you don't have Julius Randle, welcome back, me boy. That sounds great. But if you're going to pay him $33 million a year for a 3-year contract extension, I can't justify an $18 million per season raise for a guy who has only started like 30 games total in the last 2 years and is an absolute sieve on defense. I mean, this guy is getting blown by left and right. He is a matchup liability every time he steps on the floor against a team with multiple weapons. So I love his offensive game, but as the Thunder have proved, you got to be able to play on both ends of the court. And for $30+ million a year, I mean, think about this. There's reports that Austin Reeves is going to get like $30 million a year. I wouldn't give him $30 million a year if I was a general manager because he doesn't play defense. I'd give Jaden McDaniels $30 million a year, but he's only getting 25. So timing of the contract being signed is going to factor into that. I know, but if I'm a general manager and the price is more than $25 million a year, I'm not paying Naz Reid because push come to shove, if you've got him out there for 40 minutes in a playoff game, he's going to give up a lot of buckets, and that can't happen.
Tony, keep or move on from Naz Reid?
Yeah, I think you move on from him. I think we've seen a ceiling. I don't know if he can be a 20-point per game scorer in the NBA. If you asked me last year, I thought he might be able to continue to improve, but I agree with Joe. I think if he's at his best as a sixth man, and I don't think that's worth $30 million a year. And I would let him walk. I'd let a incompetent franchise like the Kings or Trailblazers pay that money.
Wow, just shots at Sacramento and Portland.
It just seems like they'd be a team that would give him 30 mil, but
Brooklyn would.
Yeah, I mean, Julius Randle, I think, just proved that he's better. He's a 20-point per game guy. He's made an All-Star game. He does have the floor that it can all explode. He's not a great player by any means, but I think he's just flat out better than Naz Reid, and I think he helps you win more than Naz Reid. So I just would value Julius Randle a step above him.
Finally, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, unrestricted free agent this season. Do you find a way to keep him on this roster, or do you just say, thanks for the years, we're moving on? Joe?
I bring him back 100%, especially if the other two are gone. I think there's a scenario where Naz is gone and Randall's gone if they're going to go out and make a big splash for somebody like Kevin Durant. If that happens, you're not bringing back, two of those guys. And I would think they would opt for the cheaper guy with more versatility and who really seems to be ascending. And I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is that. I mean, and the price tag's going to be better for Nickeil Alexander-Walker than it will be for Naz Reid. I think that's just a fact because he's getting paid so little right now compared to the other guys we're talking about. So I would do everything you can to bring him back. Plus, he's available. He's got such a good attitude. He plays super hard, even when his shot's not going down. I think that's a guy you can go to war with.
Yeah, I would say what matters is the price. I think anything under 10 mil, I would love him back on the Wolves. But if you start getting to that 12 to 15 range, I think that's just too much. They have enough options off the bench with Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, and maybe even Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, even though they play a little bit different role. They just have enough young depth on the bench that I do think he's expendable. But he does seem to love Minnesota. He fits the system well. So if the price is right, I would bring him back. But if it gets too expensive, I would move on.
All right. So what's obviously been the case and a talking point about this team the past couple off seasons with Tim Connolly and his ability to wheel and deal and make massive moves and take these big shots and chances is his ability to make those. And so obviously the first thing that people started speculating about after the Wolves lost last night is the Kevin Durant thing that we all talked about at the end of the regular season as the hype and speculation of that mounted. Is that the right move, Joe, that'll get this team over the hump? Getting Kevin Durant here at his age, what he does on the court, is that the right move, or should they be looking for something different?
Well, I just don't think you can run it back for one. And I think I wrote about this on Timberwolves on SI. Three completely speculative trade ideas that would make the Wolves a juggernaut. And obviously KD's one of them because, all the right insiders have been saying for months that Minnesota is going to be in the mix for Durant when conversations start after the season. So, and it's probably going to happen pretty fast, right? Like it's probably happening before the NBA draft on June 25th, and certainly before free agency begins on July 6th. So we're talking about a matter of 3.5 weeks before we could have some significant Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant rumors, and I would anticipate Minnesota's in a lot of those. Man, and I do love the idea of Kevin Durant in Minnesota. The problem is, and Tony, you wrote about this at Timberwolves on SI, is that he's making $54.7 million next year. It's only a 1-year deal, but to make that money work when you're dealing with the Suns team that cannot aggregate salary going back, it's really difficult. I found a way to do it. This is the only way I could find to do it on a Fanspo's trade machine. That thing's awesome. And the one I came up with was, and this is, by the way, trying to keep Jaden McDaniels out of that deal. You obviously have to get the Suns to agree to it, but if you send Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Terrence Shannon Jr., Josh Minot, and maybe they want some draft compensation, that's starting to ask for a lot, though, I think, especially when you're including Terrence Shannon, who has a very bright future. For Durant, that works. The deal actually works. You'd rid yourself of Gobert's contract. You'd have cap flexibility after Durant finishes 1 year here. He'll be 37 years old in September. The Suns would have Naz Reid, who they could sign to an extension. Terrence Shannon Jr. is a great building block. Minot helps the salaries work. I'm not going to do that deal now. If you would ask me 3 months ago and said, hey, Joe, would you include Jaden McDaniels in that? I use the dock example. If there was a dock and piranhas in the water and Anthony Edwards had to choose to save one guy who fell in, Kevin Durant or Jaden McDaniels, he'd save KD, his buddy. I don't know if I believe that as much now, and it's a testament to the stupid things that come out of my mouth, but if you had to give up Jaden McDaniels now, I don't think I would do it. So maybe I was behind the game on that one. I can admit that.
Yeah, the Gobert for Durant deal is an interesting one, but if they did that, and Naz Reid, and they would obviously have to bring back Julius Randle because they would just have zero size.
Unless Leonard Miller they trust, which I don't think they do.
Are you going to start him at the 5? Like, who's your starting 5?
Yeah, no, yeah. It would be Randle. I mean, your starting 5 is really, really, really bad at that point. So it has to be Randle for sure.
And yeah, I mean, you still have to beat Jokic probably at some point in the playoffs if you're trying to make a run with that roster. And I mean, maybe you find a guy who's 22, 23 in the draft that might give you like spot minutes, but starting a rookie would be a tough ask. And like, are they going to bring back Luka Garza, start him at the 5?
Yeah, in this scenario, I think I had the starting lineup would be Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, Jaden McDaniels, Dante DiVincenzo, and Julius Randle. So, I mean, it's an exciting team for sure. They'd score a lot of points, and I like DiVincenzo as a starting lineup option. It's just that they're a little bit smaller, and they might have some problems against a guy like Joker for sure.
How do the Wolves?
Yeah,
go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, because I love the Durant idea. If you can get rid of Gobert, Naz Reid, or Julius Randle, keep at least one of those guys, and then maybe just one or two of your young pieces, and you keep Jaden McDaniels. I think you have to do it.
Yeah.
People are saying that he's aging and everything. There's so many obstacles to get there, but really, I might be open to doing it if you really trade anyone except for Ant.
The Randle thing makes it really hard because if he opts into his contract, does that mean he's been guaranteed he won't be traded? Is that a thing, right?
Great question.
If he doesn't opt in, you don't have an option. He's off the table. He's a free agent. He's likely not coming back. In a sign and trade with Naz Reid, you could try to figure something out like that, but there's a lot of restrictions where you can only trade him right away if his salary doesn't increase by more than 5%, and his salary is going to increase by more than 5% from $15 million. So there's a lot of things that get in the way of a deal being constructed with the roster as is and contracts as they are. That's why I was like, this is the only one I can really come up with.
There's more questions than answers, I think, right now. And they got a lot of options, though, that's for sure.
Speaking of those questions, Joe, you mentioned rethinking Julius Randle, about your thoughts on him following the season after what you saw in the playoffs. What else are you rethinking after what we saw in the Western Conference Finals?
The point guard situation. I mean, you cannot look at that series and think that Minnesota has enough ball handlers to really compete with OKC. And if OKC is going to be there at the finish line in the Western Conference for years to come, you've got to fix that problem, and you got to do it instantly. So Rob Dillingham, like Tony said, X factor, right? If he can actually play a starter role 30 minutes a night at least, give you points, give you defense, limit the turnovers, gel with these guys. He's the 8th overall pick for a reason. They traded up to get him. I mean, they like his potential. We've seen flashes of like little baby Allen Iverson, little De'Aaron Fox, but that's the guy. De'Aaron Fox is another guy that I would like to see them try to trade for. And it may be very fortuitous that San Antonio lucked out and got the number 2 pick in the draft, because Dylan Harper's going number 2, right? In most drafts without Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper might be the number 1 overall pick. San Antonio already has De'Aaron Fox. They've got Steven Castle. They want to build that roster around Wembanyama. Are they going to want to have 3 really similar guards? I know Castle's got some flexibility, but do you really want to go to war with Harper, De'Aaron Fox, Steven Castle, Wembanyama in your starting lineup when you could trade De'Aaron Fox, go to battle with Harper, use that $37 million on somebody else, like in the trade, like a Jaden McDaniels? If you had to get him, would you give up Jaden McDaniels if it got you De'Aaron Fox here in Minnesota? That's a conversation you certainly have to have, I think, if you're the Timberwolves. So, yeah, for me, the number 1 takeaway here is Julius Randle's got to go. I just don't trust him. But number 2 is you got to get some point guard minutes. Mike Conley's going to be like 30,000 years old next season. He's got 1 year and $10 million left on his deal. I don't think you can go to war with Conley and Dillingham next year and run it back with Na and Ant and DiVincenzo all sharing point guard minutes. You need a real point guard. And I'm not sure Dillingham is it right now. And I don't think the Timberwolves have a lot of time to sit here and wait and hope that he grows into that role. So go out and get De'Aaron Fox if he's available, or somebody like a Darius Garland. Any of these guys would come in and be an instant upgrade.
Tony, is there anything else you're rethinking after what we saw in the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, I think Darius Garland might be a little more realistic than De'Aaron Fox. I just can't imagine the Spurs trading him after only like a few months with Wembanyama. They clearly saw something they liked in him. I feel like they got a big move coming, because it is weird having those 3 guards with Wembanyama. They might be in the Giannis sweepstakes. They're fascinating right now for them.
That's the scary part, guys, though, right? This is scary because the West is going to get tougher, especially if Giannis comes over. By the way, he's one of my 3 little pipe dreams in that 3 trades. It's absolutely no chance that happens, because it would require Julius Randle opting in and then getting traded. So I just don't see that happening. But it's gonna be tough.
I think the biggest thing with Giannis is they just don't have enough draft picks. The Bucks are going to ask for.
Well, how do you value draft picks, right?
Don't have
if you're the Timberwolves, you could sit there and say, we're giving you Jaden McDaniels. We're giving you maybe they give them Rudy Gobert, or they give them Julius Randle, and then Terrence Shannon Jr., who, if you redid the draft, he might be a top 10 pick, right? If you throw in Rob Dillingham, or you throw in the number 17 pick and the 31 this year and next year's first round pick, you're talking about some really young pieces. McDaniels has a chance to be an absolute 2-way stud. If he was on a team where he got 15 shots a night, the dude's going to average probably 20 a game, right? With that kind of defense, I mean, that's a high-end player. So if you've got Jaden and Terrence Shannon Jr., who looks like he can really score in the NBA, and then multiple draft picks, first-round caliber, and the first pick in the second round this year in a deep draft, I would think that would be somewhat enticing. I just don't know that it's going to outbid a team like Oklahoma City, who's got 15,000 first-round picks. So if you really want to, hit the ground running with Dame Lillard and no Giannis, maybe the Timberwolves offer like that would make sense. It's a pipe dream, though. I understand that.
Yeah, I think the Cavs are the one team that might be more realistic for the Wolves to do a deal with. Just seeing stuff online, it seems like they're going to want to deal one of their young players this offseason, and I doubt that's Evan Mobley or Donovan Mitchell. It just makes sense that they could look to move Darius Garland, and the Wolves liked him a lot when he was coming out of college.
Yeah.
If I had to make a list of trade candidates, he might be number 2 on my list after Durant.
You should make one.
Yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense to bring him in, but I totally agree with you. The point guard thing's the most interesting aspect, I think, in the short term, because they just need to be better there. It's clear DiVincenzo, not a true point guard, and Ant improved at his facilitating a ton this year, but there are times where he makes some boneheaded decisions, and having a guy that can make a good decision almost every time he has the ball, like a true point guard, I think would help this team so much. And I don't think that's Rob Dillingham. That's just not his game. And throwing that all at him next year, if they want him to be their full-time starter, I feel like that's a tough ask too. So it's just there's a lot of things they can look at here heading into the offseason, but they do have the options to make a lot of different moves.
You guys, I'm looking at Trade Machine right now for Darius Garland, and he's making $39.4 million. To get him, you'd almost certainly need to use Julius Randle or Jaden McDaniels. And if Julius Randle doesn't opt in, he's off the table. They're not going to want Rudy Gobert because they already have Jared Allen and the Defensive Player of the Year in Evan Mobley. So, yeah. I mean, you probably can't get there money-wise without Jaden McDaniels if Julius Randle isn't in there. So it's one of those deals. It's like, how much do you value having a high-end point guard? Do you value it more than you value Jaden McDaniels? And that's where Rob Dillingham is so key, right? And that's the risky part. You just don't know if he's going to be good enough.
So let's close out here. I want you each to make one big prediction for the Wolves offseason. Just one big prediction of what a move that they could do, that they will do. Just right off the bat here, or kind of right out of the blue. No prep for this. I didn't prep you guys for this. I didn't ask you this beforehand. So it's just a question without notice from the floor here. Joe, I'll start with you.
I think it's easy. I think it's Kevin Durant. I think there was so much smoke and steam around that during the season, and Minnesota apparently reached out multiple times before the trade deadline. The fact that you've had people saying since March and April that once these conversations start up again, guys like John Krasinski who really do know, Shams Charania who's being fed good information, these guys know. And if they were saying for months that the Wolves are going to be back in those discussions this summer, it kind of indicates to me anyway, if you're connecting dots, that this has kind of been part of the plan all along, right? Like, you traded Cat, you got DiVincenzo in that great contract, very tradable, but very keepable if you can't use him in a deal. Randall's the linchpin. And if Randall's gone, you've got the ability to come up with some fireworks and give Anthony Edwards somebody to take that scoring pressure off of him and give them an incredible 1-2 punch, albeit a shorter championship window. Immediate championship window, though. So I think Kevin Durant is it. It's just a matter of finding a way to get it done and making that money work. And maybe that's why they redid Gobert's contract last year as well. A lot of chess moves in advance of the big checkmate.
Tony?
Yeah, I agree. I have a feeling there's going to be a big trade again. I guess my bold take would be that Randall, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are all not on this team next year. But if that's involved in a trade or if they opt to not retain any of them, I think some way or another, I just could foresee them moving on from all three. And we're this time next year, there's a completely different roster we're talking about.
Who's I guess final question for me here. Who's the pressure on most next season for the Wolves to succeed? Joe?
It might be Tim Connolly, honestly. Even though he's made great decisions,
He'll probably get a contract extension here, I would imagine.
yeah, and I mean Minnesota has had a terrible run of decision makers in their front office, so I think any realistic Wolves fan loves the moves that Connolly has made, but I think he could. This might be his biggest offseason because, like I mentioned, in the short term, you got to beat the Thunder in the next 3 to 5 years, and I think this offseason is going to determine if the Wolves can because they don't have many draft picks after this year. They kind of lucked into the first rounder with that cat trade and the fact that the Pistons made the playoffs, which wasn't expected. So this offseason, I think, is going to explain a lot what they do in the next 5 years. The cat deal was obviously massive, but um, I mean, all these pieces are expendable with Randle and Reid, and they're going to determine who I think they want to run with for the next 5 years.
Uh, uh, Man, I think the pressure. I, I I think it's just too easy to say Anthony Edwards. We all know there's pressure there. He's 24. It's like, when are you going to take the next step? He's been phenomenal. The guy just led the NBA in 3-pointers. I mean, he ran into a buzzsaw, but he carried the Timberwolves when they needed to be carried against the Warriors. Same with the Lakers. Didn't get it done against the Thunder. Didn't get it done against the Mavericks last year. So yeah, there's the inevitable pressure of being a superstar. But in the modern NBA, not one superstar is enough to go deep. You know, look at the Thunder. You can say they have one superstar, but that's a megastar in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then they've got two other guys who probably fit that bill in Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, who, if they weren't household names before this series, they are now. And they will really be household names if they take care of business in the NBA Finals. The Wolves don't have more than one absolute star. Everybody called Julius Randle a star. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. He's not a star. He's been an all-star, but that's like calling Mike Conley a star. Mike Conley's been an all-star, but he's not a star, you know? The Julius Randle is the Chris Bosh when you need a D Wade and a LeBron. That's the fact of the NBA.
That might even be a little too much.
Man, that's high end. I know that, but it's like, okay, you need a Derek White. Julius Randle's not as good as Derek White, not as impactful in a game. And Derek White's the number 3 on a Boston team with 2 stars, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, right? Like, you got to have more than one star. So the pressure is on Anthony Edwards, but it's only fair to sit here and say you got to take this team to a championship if he has another guy who's an actual star playing alongside him. So if KD comes or somebody else who's a star player comes, then yeah, put that pressure on Anthony Edwards. Until then, I think it's Connolly. I think it's Finch. You got to glue this thing together as best as you possibly can. And then Rob Dillingham. There's just a lot of pressure if they don't go out and find a point guard. He's the guy next year if they don't go do it. You know, it's like with the Vikings, JJ McCarthy. We drafted you 10th overall for a reason. Well, did the Timberwolves trade up for Rob Dillingham for a reason? Yeah. And now it's going to be time next season, if they don't go get a point guard, to be the man.
Yeah. Should be interesting to watch what develops and how this all develops this offseason. Surely plenty of moves to keep track of. Go follow all of our work over at Timberwolves on SI, also covering the Vikings at Vikings on SI, the Gophers at Gophers on SI, and the Twins at Twins on SI. Covering it all for you. Hit subscribe to the channel. It does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video here to the Bring Me the Sports channel. We'll talk to you tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports. Talk to you then.